Welcome everyone to this 4-part Blender tutorial series where we're going to be creating this slice of pizza in Blender. So in this part, in part 1, we're going to be starting off by sculpting the pizza crust, and then we will also be sculpting the pizza sauce and the cheese as well. Then in part 2, we're going to be lighting the scene, and then we're going to be creating procedural materials for the pizza crust, the pizza sauce, and the cheese. Then in part 3, we're going to be modeling the pepperoni and the olives, and then we will place those on the pizza. And then in part 4, we're going to be creating the pineapples and the onions and the basil, and then we'll be duplicating the pineapple and the onions and the basil and putting them on the pizza. And then we will do the rendering and the compositing to get the final image, which you can see right here. Now, I will be doing this tutorial in the Cycles render engine because I want it to look very realistic, but you could use Blender Eevee if you want to. Here is what the final render looks like in Blender Eevee, so it is okay. So you could use Eevee if you want to, but I will be using the Cycles render engine. Now, just a couple more things before we get started. Tutorials like these are made possible thanks to my Gumroad customers and my Patreon supporters and my members on the YouTube memberships. So if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then checking out my Gumroad and Patreon and the YouTube memberships are all great ways to help support me and this channel so I can keep on making Blender tutorials. And on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, you can also get the project files for this tutorial, so you can get the finished pizza 3D model with the textures and the renders and all that. And then also, before we start, I want to thank Sketchfab for sponsoring this video. Sketchfab is a 3D model marketplace where you can buy, sell, and even upload your own 3D models and preview them in your browser. You can also purchase models and assets from Sketchfab's huge 3D model store. Use the model inspector to preview the wireframe, matcap, textures, and more before you purchase. Check out Sketchfab with the link in the description. Alright, so to help us get some very nice realistic lighting for our pizza slice, I'm going to be downloading this Pillars HDRI, and this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com, so the link is in the description if you'd like to download it. And I'm going to be downloading the 1K version and the HDR version, and then I'll just download this. And then for the basil on the pizza, I'm going to be downloading this Basil Texture, and this is a free image from pixabay.com, so again, link is in the description if you'd like to download it. So you can just create a free account on Pixabay, and then you can just click on free download, and I'm going to be downloading the highest resolution. So again, link is in the description to this texture. Alright, so here I am in a new scene in Blender, and my screencast keys are also right down here in the corner so you can see what buttons I'm pressing during the tutorial. Now in this part, we are going to be using sculpting to create the pizza crust and the pizza sauce and the cheese. And so because of that, I am going to be using my drawing tablet for the sculpting. Now you don't have to use a drawing tablet if you don't want to, but I would recommend using a drawing tablet if you're able to, because it's much easier using a drawing tablet and you can get a much better result. And if you're interested in purchasing a drawing tablet, I will have some Amazon links in the description to some tablets that I recommend, and those are affiliate links. So if you purchase something through those links, that will help me out, but with no extra cost to you. So I'll be using my Huion display tablet. So it's a tablet where I can actually draw on the screen, but you definitely don't need something that fancy. Even if you can just use one of those smaller pad tablets where you draw down here, but then you're looking up at the screen, that will work great as well. And that'll be much better than using a mouse. But you can use a mouse if you're not able to get a drawing tablet. I just think that you will get a better result if you use a tablet. Alright, so before I start a big project, I always like to save the Blender file. So let's click right up here on File and then click on Save As. And I'm just going to rename this to pizzaslice.blend, and I will save this in a folder with the tutorial files. And I'm just going to click on Save As. So then as you're working on the project, you can just press Ctrl S and that will save the Blender file. Alright, so to start off, I'm going to press the A key to make sure everything is selected, and then I'm going to press the X key, and then we're going to click on Delete. Always make sure you delete the default cube. So I'm now going to press Shift A, and let's go right here to Mesh, and we're going to add a cube. I'll press the tab key and that will take us into edit mode. And we're just going to start by modeling a base mesh for the sculpting. So I'm going to press S to scale, and let's scale this down on the Z axis, and I'm just going to make it quite a bit smaller. Then I'm going to press S to scale again, and we're going to hit Y to scale it out on the Y axis, and let's just bring that out. And I will also press S to scale and scale it down on the Z axis a little bit more. And then I will press G to grab, and let's bring this on the Y axis and just bring it forward. And you can press the 1 on the numpad, and that's going to take you to front view. So I can see this way is the front. So I'm now going to click right up here to go to the face select, and then I can select this face, and I'm going to press S to scale, and let's scale this on the X axis, and we'll just make that a bit smaller and just place it about there. Then I'm going to navigate here to the back, and I'm going to select this face. I can press S to scale, and let's scale this on the X axis. And then I can press G to grab, and let's bring this on the Y axis and bring it back a little bit. Then I'm going to press E to extrude. Let's extrude this out, just bring that out a bit. And then I can also scale this on the X axis and make it a little bit longer. And then I think I also want to just select this face right here on the front. I'll press G to grab, and let's bring this back on the Y axis a little bit. So I'm now going to select this face right here, and then I'm going to press E to extrude, and let's bring this up on the Z axis. So hit Z, bring that up there. This is going to be the crust for the pizza. Bring that up, and then I can press E to extrude again, and then place it there, and I'll press S to scale, and let's scale this on the Y axis. So hit Y to scale it on the Y axis. We're going to bring that down. Then I can press G to grab and Z on the Z axis and just kind of bring it down a little bit. Now I also want the pizza slice to kind of look like it's falling down a little bit, almost as if someone's holding it right here, and so the end of the pizza is just kind of sagging down a little bit. So you could keep it straight if you want to make it look like it's on a plate or something. I want to make it look like it's almost floating a little bit. So I'm going to add some loop cuts in here, and then we will rotate it down. So I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and I will click right there and then drag over and then click again to place that loop cut there. Then I'm going to press Ctrl R again. I can left click and then bring that over, left click again to place that, and then I can press Ctrl R again and left click and then left click just to place that there. All right, so I'm now going to press 3 on the numpad. That's going to take me to the side view. I can hold down the Z button. Let's go into the wireframe view. And then I also want to click right up here to go to the Vertex Select. So I'm now just going to press B for the box select. I'm going to drag a box around these vertices, and then I can press R to rotate and G to grab. And we're just going to bring that down a little bit. Then I'm going to press B again for the box select, but this time I'm going to click and hold with my middle mouse wheel. So press down with the middle mouse button and just drag around those vertices and then let go. And then I can press R to rotate and G to grab, and we're just going to have that so it kind of rotates down a little bit. So the pizza is kind of sagging. All right, hold down the Z button, go back into solid view. That is looking pretty good. So let's press the tab key to go back to object mode, and then I want to smooth this out. So I'm going to press Control 2. So hold down the Control key and then press the 2 on the top of your keyboard, and that is the shortcut key to add a subdivision surface. So now this is subdivided. Let's also use the object context menu to shade this smooth. And just so that you're aware, I use the right click select. So I hit the W key for the object context menu, but you can just right click and then click on shade smooth. Now you can see that it's kind of low quality, kind of on the edges. And so I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and I'm going to add some loop cuts. So I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut right here down the center, but then I want to scroll my mouse wheel out so that there are 2. And then I just want to left click and then right click so it stays in the center. So I'll now press S to scale, and let's scale this on the X axis, and I'm going to scale it way up and just scale that way up so that it's very close to the edge. So something like that. Then I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see this is very smooth, and I want to sharpen this up. So I'm going to press Ctrl R, and let's left click, bring this over and bring it pretty close, and then left click again to place that. And then right here I want to sharpen this up as well, so let's press Ctrl R, left click, bring that in, and then left click again. And then I can press the tab key to go back to object mode. Alright, that's looking good. So we now have a very nice base mesh for sculpting. And also on the levels viewport and render, I'm going to turn these both up to 3, and that way it's just going to give even more detail, so we'll have a nice detailed mesh to start off with the sculpting. And then something something else that I want to do is I'm going to press the 7 on the numpad for top view, and I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I can just press the A key a few times to make sure everything is selected. And let's just make this pizza slice a little bit thicker. So I'm going to scale it. So press S to scale. We'll hit X to scale it on the X-axis and just make that a little bit thicker. All right, tab back into object mode, and that's looking pretty good. So I now need to apply this modifier so that it's actual geometry. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the modifier and then press Ctrl A, and that is going to apply the modifier. So I can tab into edit mode, and you can see we have a pretty high detailed mesh. All right, so to do the sculpting, just make sure this object is selected, and then let's click right here to go to the sculpting tab. And then there's a few things I want to do to kind of set up the layout. I don't need any of these settings over here because all the settings are right up here. So I'm going to click right here when the crosshair appears, click and hold, drag up and let go. And then also right here, click and hold and drag over and let go. That's just my personal preference. And then I also want to change the matte cap because there's a different matte cap that I prefer. So I'm going to click on the drop down right here, and I'm going to click on the matte cap and click right here. And I have created my own matte caps, and I've downloaded some online. I actually have a tutorial on how to create and add in your own matte caps. The link is in the description. But I like to use this one here, and this one is built into Blender. So it's this like clay matte cap, and I think it works really well for sculpting. Now when I sculpt over on this side, I want it to be mirrored over to this side. So I'm going to click on the X right here, and this is going to turn on the X symmetry. So you can see now there's that little dot there on the other side. So when I sculpt on one side, it'll be sculpted over to the other side. And that way we can sculpt it a lot faster. And then I'm also going to click on this button right here to check mark the Dyn Topo, and then click on OK. And the Dyn Topo setting is going to add topology as we sculpt. So where we sculpt, it'll add more detail. And then let's also click right here on the Dyn Topo settings, and on the detail size here, I'm going to turn this to like a 3 because I want there to be a lot of detail. If this is making your sculpting kind of laggy, you could turn it up to maybe like a 6 or a 5 or something. I'm going to turn it down to like a 3. So I'm now going to bring this over to my drawing tablet, and we'll get started with the sculpting. Now, if you've never done sculpting in Blender before, I do have a sculpting with Blender for beginners tutorial. I'll have the link in the description if you'd like to watch that tutorial. And I also have a video on how I set up Blender for sculpting. Again, links in the description if you'd like to watch that. So I'm going to click right over here to the clay strips brush. That is my favorite brush for sculpting. And then I'm also going to click right here on the brush settings, and I'm going to go right down here and make sure the accumulate is turned on and also the front faces only. All right, so let's sculpt the pizza crust now. So I'm just going to navigate right over here, and then I'm just going to click down with my pen, and I'm going to start to sculpt here around the crust, and I'm just going to make that kind of lumpy going along there, kind of making that kind of bumpy, and also going along there, kind of bringing that out. And then I can hold down the control key and click with my pen, and that is going to push in clay. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bumpy and lumpy, kind of going along here. Let's also make some parts kind of bumpy here. And then it is going to look a little bit similar because we have the symmetry turned on. So after we sculpt a good looking pizza crust, I'm going to turn off the symmetry, and we'll do some more sculpting to make it look different on each side. So I'm just going to go along here, adding more clay because you can see this is a little bit low quality. So I'm going to go along here and just kind of give it some random bumps and lumps to make it look like the pizza crust. And then you can also hold down the shift key, and if you hold down the shift key and then sculpt, it is going to go to the smooth brush, and so it's going to smooth out what you've sculpted. All right, so I'm going to go along here, just add more bumps here and there. You can also press Ctrl S, and that will save the Blender file. Let's also go down here and add some bumps here and there, just making it a little bit lumpy and making it a bit random. And then holding down the shift key, I'm going to smooth that out. Going along here, adding some more bumps, and also around here. Let's also go down here onto the side of the pizza, and I'm going to go back and forth, just clicking with my pen, and I'm going to add more clay here on the side, just to make the side of the pizza crust a little bit more round. So just going along there, all right, and then hold down the shift key, and just kind of smooth that out. All right, going along there, kind of bring this over to the end of the pizza crust, and then hold down the shift key, and just smooth that out. And we'll go right here to the back, and I want to do kind of the same thing. So I'm going to go along here, and I'm going to add a lot more clay on the back here just to make the end of the pizza crust bump out a little bit. So just going along there, kind of making it a little bit random, maybe just adding some little circles here just to kind of make it a bit bumpy. And also up on the top here, just kind of adding some little strips of clay here and there just to make it a bit bumpy and random. But I'm just going to hold down the shift key as I sculpt, and this is going to smooth out the mesh. So we're just going to smooth that out there. And also go along here and kind of smooth that out. Smooth that all out. Add a little bit more clay here, and then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that all out there. I do want it to be bumpy, but I do want it to be pretty smooth as well. All right, and go along here on the bottom, adding some more clay, and then hold down the shift key and go back along there and just smooth that out. That's pretty good. You can also hold down the control key as you sculpt, and if you hold down the control key as you sculpt, that's going to push in the clay, and then hold down the shift key and just kind of smooth that all out. That's looking good. All right, let's go back to the front here and add some more, and then smooth that out. And then I'm also going to go right here and click on the crease brush, and then with the crease brush I'm going to go along here and just kind of crease in some areas. I don't want it to be super strong, but I'm just going to crease in a few areas here at the end of the crust, and also right over here on the side I'm going to crease some areas here, so crease in some areas here. And then I can also hold down the control key as I sculpt with the crease brush, and if you hold down the control key, instead of creasing in, it's actually going to pinch out. So you can see now that is kind of coming out a little bit. And again, I don't want it to be super strong, but I'm just going to kind of pinch that out a little bit, and then just kind of go back here and crease that in, and then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that out because I don't want it to be super sharp. I could also go here along the back and kind of crease a few areas here and there, maybe add a few little creases here and there. All right, that's pretty good. Let's click back up here on the clay strips brush, and then I want to go along here, along this area, and just add some more clay just to make it kind of bumpy and random, and then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that all out there. And right over here on the sides, let's do this as well. So go along on the side here. Let's also press Control S to save the Blender file, and then we can just go along here, and I'm just going to continue to sculpt. Just go along there to the center, and then right here I want to kind of make it come out a little bit and kind of make it more smooth, because right now it's kind of blocky. So let's just go along here, kind of push that all out and go in circles, and then hold down the shift key, and we're just going to smooth out any areas which are kind of bumpy and round. So smooth this out and kind of go along here and add more clay on the side, adding more clay here on the side to make it more round, and then you can hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that all out there. All right, that's really good. Smooth that out just a little bit. I don't want to smooth it out too much, but just kind of smoothing out those rough vertices there. All right, smoothing that out. Also right down here, we need to smooth this out a bit because that's a little bit rough. And then I'm going to go along here, go along the bottom, and just add more topology there, and just kind of give it some little bumps here and there, just kind of make it a bit random. All right, go along there, give it some more clay, and then you can just hold down the shift key, and we're going to smooth that out. All right, so smoothing that all out and kind of just going around in circles, holding down the shift key and pressing down with my pen. And we're just going to smooth that all out. And as you're sculpting, it's a good idea to just be moving around a lot so that you can see your sculpt from different angles, and that way you'll be able to get the shapes more correct. And then I want to make the sides a little bit more bumpy. So I'm going to go along here on the side and just hold down the control key, kind of make a little dent there, and then just kind of go along here without holding down the control key and kind of pop out an area, and then hold down the control key and just kind of push that in a little bit. And we're just going to go along there and do that just a little. I do want it to be kind of subtle. I don't want it to be too strong, but we can just go along there and make some bumpy areas. So let's continue to do that. Hold down the control key, push in, and then we can go out there, and maybe another one here, and then push out a little bit there. And then I can just hold down the shift key, go along there and make that nice and smooth. But that way it's just going to make the edges of the pizza slightly bumpy. But something like that is pretty good. And that might actually even be a little bit too strong. So some of these areas I can even go back and add a little bit more clay there. But now you can especially see on the edge of the pizza right there, it's just a little bit bumpy here and there. And that's what I'm going for. Alright, so this is looking really good. So now what I'm going to do is click on this button right here. That's going to turn off the X symmetry. So now I can sculpt on either side and we can just make it look a little bit different. So really I'm just going to go along here and just add some things here and there which will make it look different on each side. So just adding some little lumps here. Hold down the shift key, kind of smooth it out. You don't really need to go too crazy with it, but just changing it up a little bit, just changing the shapes a little bit is going to make it look not the same. And it's not super important. It is going to be hard to kind of notice in the final render. It is going to be hard to notice that symmetry anyways, but just to make it a little bit different and a little bit random on both sides, I am going to just kind of change the shape a little bit on each side. So I'm just going to go along here, go to some different areas and just change this shape a little bit to break that symmetry and make it look a bit more realistic. Kind of go along the back here, especially things like this. You can kind of see there's a lump there and a lump there. So just kind of going along here and just kind of changing that a little bit. Hold down the shift key, kind of smooth that out. And I'm also going to press the G key, and the G key is going to go to the grab brush. And then I can also press the F key and then bring my pen out and then click, and that is going to make my brush bigger. So with the grab brush, we can just kind of click and tap and we can kind of pull it around, and it's just going to pull the mesh around. So the grab brush is really helpful just for kind of changing the shape, because I can just kind of tap along here and I can just make the shape a little bit random. So I'm just going to pull some parts out and kind of push some other parts in, just to make the shape a little bit more random and different. Maybe go down here and also play around with the shape of that. Maybe go here on the side and just push some parts down and some parts up. Pretty subtle stuff. You're not going to notice it too much, but it will just make it a little bit more realistic. Alright, and that is it for the sculpting of the pizza crust. So I will just press Ctrl S to save. And then I'm going to go right here from Sculpt Mode, and I'm going to change this back to Object Mode. So I'm now going to duplicate this object, and we're going to use this object to create the pizza sauce. So in Object Mode, I'm going to press Shift D, and Shift D is going to duplicate the object, but then I can just right click to bring it back to the very center. And then let's actually click right back over here to go to the layout, and that way I can go right here to the modifiers panel. So what I'm going to do is add a modifier to make this entire object thicker. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and let's go right down here, and we are going to add the Displace Modifier, so it's under Deform Displace. And you can see that when you add that modifier, it makes it really thick. So now let's just click on New here to add a new texture, but we're not going to actually add any texture in here. We're just going to leave it as a blank black texture. So on the mid-level right here, we're going to change the mid-level all the way up to 1, and then we're going to take the strength value and we're going to turn that way down. And I'm actually going to bring the strength way down to a negative value. And specifically, I'm going to be using a strength value of -0.04. So if you want to change it to that number, or you can just hold down the shift key as you click and drag with the strength value. And I just want to make this object a little bit thicker than the other object. So you can see if I make it a negative value, it's just going to bring that out and make it a little bit thicker. So just like that. So I now want to apply this modifier. So with my mouse hovered over the modifier, I can just press Ctrl A and that will apply the modifier. So now we have 2 slices of pizza. If I press G to grab, you can see there's the other one, but I'll just press the escape key. So this one is just a little bit bigger than the other one. So I now just want to go back to the sculpting, and I want to remove the areas where there's not going to be any pizza sauce. Before I do that though, I do want the viewport display to look a little bit better, just so that I can tell apart the 2 different objects. So I'm going to click right here to go to the material properties, and then I'm going to click on New here to add a new material, and I can just rename this material to sauce. Alright, so I've renamed this material to sauce, and then I'm going to go way down here, and I'm actually going to click on this arrow to minimize this, and I'm going to open up the viewport display. Now on the color here, I just want to change this to like a red color because pizza sauce is red. So just change that to something like that, just kind of a red color. Then I'm going to press the H key, and the H is going to hide that object, and then I'm going to click on this object here, and then I'm going to go right here and click on the new button, and I can just rename this material to Crust. So rename that to Crust, and then right here on the viewport display, this one is going to be kind of a yellowish brownish color, so something like that. And why we are changing the viewport display is so that we'll be able to see the difference when we're sculpting. All right, so I'm now going to press Alt-H, and Alt-H is going to unhide that other object, and then just make sure the pizza sauce object is selected, and we can go right back over here to the Sculpting tab, and that is going to take us into Sculpt Mode. Now, I don't want to use that red matte cap, so I'm going to click right here on the matte cap settings, and I'm going to click on the matte cap, and I'm going to just change this to like this matte cap. That matte cap works pretty well. Just change it to a matte cap that doesn't have very much color. You could also click right here on the studio. I actually think I might just do that, and I'm just going to change it to like this one here. That one is fine. So just change it to one of these matte caps or the studio lights, which don't really have any color. So now what I can do is I can go back here to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to hold down the control key and sculpt in. And you can see that what we're doing now is we're getting rid of the areas where we don't want the pizza sauce to be. So we're able to see the pizza crust through the pizza sauce. So using the clay strips brush, I'm just going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to go along here and remove clay wherever there isn't supposed to be any pizza sauce. So pretty much all over here, also down here, there's just going to be pizza sauce right here on the top of the pizza. So hold down the control key, and we're just pushing that other object in, and this is the object that we added the displacement to, so it was bigger. So I'm just pushing that in, and then we're able to see the pizza crust under that object. And then if you want to, on some areas, you can kind of hold down the shift key and just kind of smooth out any areas. So hold down the control key, go along here and push all that clay in, especially here on the bottom. We don't want any pizza sauce here on the bottom, so push that all in, push that in as well, push that all in. Let's kind of go up here on the side a little bit, and I want to push this in as well. Now I do want a little bit of the pizza sauce to be going on the side, so what I'm going to do is actually kind of make it lumpy and kind of have it going back and forth. So I'm just going to hold down the control key as I sculpt, and then I'm going to have some parts go a little bit higher and other parts go a little bit lower. And then you can also hold down the shift key, and that will kind of smooth it out. And we're just going to smooth out the pizza sauce. And also right here you can see there's like a few areas like right there. If you just hold down the shift key, that's going to smooth that out, and that'll also just get rid of those areas. So just hold down the shift key and smooth out some of those areas. And then back here on the side, hold down the control key, and we're going to push in that pizza sauce. Just go along here all the way down here. Push that all in. Keep on pushing in that pizza sauce so you can only see it where it would make sense, where the pizza sauce would actually be. And just getting rid of those areas. And again, hold down the shift key and smooth out some areas if you need to. Like right there, smoothing that all out, smoothing that out. And let's just get rid of all the pizza sauce, which is down here on the bottom of the pizza. All right, and then going along here on the side and pushing in any more areas that you need to push in, like there. All right, let's just kind of zoom around here and take a look. That is looking pretty good. And I'm also not doing this with the symmetry. You could use the symmetry if you want to, but if I don't use the symmetry, that way it's just going to be a little bit more random because it's not going to be the same on either side because I'm having to manually push these in. So I'm going to push this all in here. There isn't any pizza sauce here on the crust. Now I do want there to be a little bit of pizza sauce just kind of coming up a little bit onto the crust, onto the top here of the crust. So I'm just going to go along here and kind of go up and down to make it look a bit more random, just so that it looks like a little bit of the pizza sauce just kind of came up on the side. And then also like places like this, I need to hold down the shift key, kind of smooth out those areas and push all that area in there. Also back over here, hold down the shift key, smooth that out. All right, take a look, just kind of make sure there isn't any pizza sauce any places that we don't want it. Let's press Control S to save. So that is looking pretty good. That's pretty much just where we want the pizza sauce to be. Let's go along here and kind of sharpen up this edge a little bit, kind of sharpen this up, and then also kind of round this. Let's round this pretty well, kind of round this here, and just push that all in. And you can see I'm kind of going up and down to make it look a little bit wavy, or just to make it look a little bit more organic and random. All right, going along here, pushing that down, pushing that in, and then you can hold down the shift key and smooth out any of these areas. You can also press the G key, and the G key will take you back to the grab brush. And then I'm just going to tap around, just kind of push and tap, and you can change the shape of that if you need to. So changing any shape there of the pizza sauce, pushing that in, pushing that down, maybe bringing this up a little bit. And then let's go back to the clay strips brush, and I want to add a bit more detail here. So we're not going to hold down the control key, we're just going to add clay, and I actually need to turn on the Dyn Topo so it'll add more detail here. So let's click right up here on this button. That's going to turn on the Dyn Topo, click on OK, and then on the Dyn Topo detail size, I'm going to set this to 3. Then I can go along here and you can see it's going to add more detail there. It's going to add more topology, and I'm just going to sculpt a little bit, just add a little bit of clay there and right there as well. Hold down the shift key, smooth that out. And you can go along here and just add another little layer, kind of add another layer of sauce just kind of on the edge, kind of smooth that out. And let's go here, go along here, add a little bit more clay, and you can see there's like a few areas where it's overlapping a little bit. So to fix that, you can just hold down the shift key and really smooth that all out. All right, that's looking pretty good. Over here on the side, smooth this out as well. And then go here on the other side, add just a little layer, kind of add another layer there of sauce, and then smooth that out. And then I'm going to press the G key again to go to the grab brush, and I'm just going to make some parts come a little bit more up and then other parts a little bit more down, again just to make it a bit more random and make it look a bit organic. Also, I need to hold down the shift key, smooth out a few areas that were kind of popping out there through the crust, but just go along here, kind of tap some areas and make some parts a little bit up and then some parts a little bit more down. All right, that's really good. So I'm now going to click right back over here to go to the layout. Just go back to the original layout and I can press Control S again to save. All right, so we're now going to do pretty much the same thing for the cheese object. So just make sure that you have the sauce object selected, and I'm going to press Shift D. Shift D will duplicate the object, and then I can just press Escape to bring it back to its default position. So I'm now going to press 3 on the numpad, and that'll take me to the side view. And then I'm going to press G to grab, and I'm just going to bring this up a little bit and then place it there. So basically, I'm just going to bring it up and forward just a little bit. So press G to grab and just move this object right up there. So basically, we have 2 sauce objects on top of each other. So now what I want to do is I want to go over here to the materials, and I'm going to click on this button right here. It looks like 2 little pieces of paper. That's going to duplicate the material, and so it says sauce 001. I'm going to rename this material to cheese. Now I want the viewport display to look different so I can tell it apart. So on the viewport display color on this material, let's make this kind of a yellowy color for the cheese. All right, so we can tell this apart. So I'm now just going to go right back over here to the sculpting tab, and we can now just sculpt the cheese over the top. So I'm going to go right over here to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to first get rid of any areas where we don't want cheese. So I'm just going to hold down the control key, go in there, just push in the cheese, and then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that out, smooth out any areas. All right, so I can hold down the control key, and we're just going to push in any areas where I don't want the cheese to be. And so I want to be able to see all around the sauce. I want to be able to see the outline of the sauce. So I'm going to hold down the control key and push all of that cheese in there, push that all in there so that we can see that sauce there going around the crust. Hold down the shift key, and we're just going to smooth out the cheese. And then hold down the control key and push that in a little bit. Just kind of push the cheese in and push it up a little bit. So I'm just holding down the control key and pushing in with my tablet pen, just pushing that in there. And that's just going to make the cheese more sharp so I can see the sauce a little bit better. And then you can also go back along here and kind of push the cheese out a little bit. And also something that I want to do is click right here to turn on the Dyn Topo. Click on OK, and that way it'll add more detail where we need it. So I'm just going to go along here and just push the cheese out a little bit on the edge here. All right, go back and forth there, just kind of push the cheese out, and then hold down the shift key, and we're going to smooth that all out there. And do the same thing here for the end. So just go along there, hold down the control key, push in any areas that you need to, and then hold down the shift key and smooth that out. Kind of do the same thing for here. And also right up here on the top, the cheese is coming up quite high. You can see how thick that is. So I'm going to hold down the control key and just kind of push in the cheese a little bit. I don't want to push it in too far so that the sauce comes through, but I'm just going to push it in a little bit just to make the cheese a bit more flat and not have it coming up quite as much. So hold down the control key and kind of push in some areas. If you push it in too far, you can just kind of sculpt back over that. And then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that out. I'm just going around in circles as I hold down the shift key and lightly smooth out some areas. So just kind of pushing this in so that the cheese isn't quite as high, so that it's not quite as thick. kind of pushing that in. And it's okay if you go too far, you can just kind of push that clay back out just by sculpting there and adding a bit more cheese. Holding down the shift key now and smoothing that all out. Let's also hold down the control key and push that all in there. Push that all in there, just removing any cheese if it's in an area that we don't want it. Like right up here, I want to be able to see the sauce all around, and also push that in there and then smooth that out as well. Let's press Control S again to save the project. And also right up here as well, I want to kind of smooth out that crease right there, maybe even add a little bit more cheese there, and then smooth it out. All right, now I want some of the cheese to look like it's melting down a little bit. So first I'm going to do that right over here on the end. So I'm going to press the G key, and that is going to take me to the grab brush, and I'm going to go right over here on the side, kind of on the end of the pizza, and I'm just going to kind of click and tap, and we're going to bring that cheese kind of down, make it look like the cheese is kind of warm and kind of melting a little bit, like this is a freshly baked pizza. So we're just going to bring that cheese down to make it look like it's kind of melting. And then I also want to add little bits of cheese kind of on the side, which are kind of melting and coming down a little bit, kind of oozing down. So to do this, I'm going to go to the draw brush. So the draw brush is just a nice circular brush. And also once I go to the draw brush, I'm going to click right here on the brush settings, and I want to make sure the accumulate and front faces only are both checked on the draw brush. And then I can also press the F key. That's going to make my brush bigger, and I can make it a bit bigger. So I'm now going to go along here, and I'm just going to go back and forth kind of on the edge here, and you can see that that's just going to bring the cheese down, and then I can smooth it out. I can also hold down the control key if I want to bring any areas up. So I can just go along here, kind of make the cheese look like it's coming down in some areas, just going around there in circles and then smoothing that out. You can kind of see what that's doing. So it's basically just making the cheese look like it's melting a bit, kind of make it look like it's coming down, and then bring that up. Hold down the shift key and smooth out any areas if you need to, just like that. So kind of look at this from a bit farther away. You can see how that's looking. And you could also press the G key to go to the grab brush, and then you could just kind of tap and kind of push it down if you want to make any of those pieces a little bit stronger. All right, that is looking really cool. So let's go over on the other side and do that as well. So I'm going to go to the draw brush, kind of go over here to the other side, and we'll do that for this side as well. So I'm going to make some big parts where the cheese is kind of melting down, and we'll make a few more. So maybe another one here. Hold down the shift key, kind of smooth that out. Maybe make this one a little bit bigger and then smooth that out as well. Kind of move out every now and then, kind of look around from farther away and see how you like that. I think I want to go to the grab brush, so I'm going to press G for the grab brush, and then I'm going to tap around and just play around with the shape of that. And then also like down here, maybe bring down some of that cheese. Let's go back to the draw brush, and then I can kind of push that down and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out. And if you wanted to, right up here on the top as well, you could just make the cheese a little bit lumpy. So you can hold down the control key and kind of push in some parts of the cheese and also bring some parts out. I do want it to be kind of subtle though. I don't want it to be super strong. So I'm gonna make sure it's pretty smooth, but if you want to, some areas, you can kind of make that cheese a little bit lumpy. All right, so with that finished, the sculpting is now done. So I'm going to click right back over here to go to the layout, and then I'm going to press Control S to save. So this is going to finish up part 1 of the Slice of Pizza tutorial series. So I hope you've been enjoying this so far. I hope you've been able to easily follow along, and thank you so much for watching. And I will be releasing one part each day of the tutorial series, so when part 2 is released, I will put it right up there on the end screen and also down there in the video description. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if you'd like to help support me and this channel, you can also purchase the tutorial files on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, and that is a great way to help support this channel. But I hope you enjoyed this part. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in part 2.